Hey, I'm about to cook my dog's dinner. I'm gonna show you how I do this. So I take chicken thighs, which is dark chicken meat. These are boneless, skinless thighs. This is about 4 pounds. And then I've got about 3.5 pounds of steamed veggies. And I try to get about 50%. Sometimes I do 40-60 of either one. So what I do is I cook the chicken for about 20 minutes at 350. You want to get it cooked, but not too much. You don't want to overcook it and turn it into a bunch of histamines. But it's okay if it's not completely cooked. The dogs can handle the raw food. You just don't want to leave it completely raw. So what I do is I take about half of this, because I'm going to do 2 batches. I get the meat in there, and I try to get about half of the liquid that built up in there. Each batch of chicken produces a different amount of liquid, and depending how long you cook it and temperature and stuff. So just try to split it up, and you're going to end up with some batches that are like have a lot more liquid than others. And then I'll usually get a little bit of veggies in here, and I'll run it once just to break everything down, and then I can actually get the other half of the veggies in for this batch. And sometimes I'll add my supplements now before putting the rest of it in, so it mixes in there. So I'll go over that a little bit. You don't have to add any of the supplements when you do the dark chicken meat and the cruciferous steamed vegetables. You're getting a good amount of nutrition. If the dog is really sick and you're switching over to this, it might not hurt to get into some extra nutrients at first. There are some like dog nutrients. These are probably not going to be as human quality nutrients, but to do the human ones, you're going to have a little bit better understanding. So it depends how you do it, but there's vitamins, and then this is hepatic support, which is for their liver and kidneys and stuff. The ingredients that are in here, if you read through them, are pretty funky, so I try not to use these anymore. What I usually add is a little bit of iodine, which is a whole rabbit hole by itself. But this is an important part of health in humans and dogs. I think if you have a sick dog, the iodine's really going to help. You want to go slow with it. And for your dog, you don't have to go crazy learning a ton about it. You can get them started on it and just keep an eye on them, slow down if they seem to go through a lot of healing reactions. This is boron. Boron helps dislodge fluoride, which these guys have probably been getting in their water. If you haven't been able to give them spring water or anything like that, at least try to get them some kind of filtered water. The fluoride tap water is going to be horrible for any animal. And then dogs produce their own vitamin C, but I add a little bit every once in a while when I notice I'm going to push them through a little bit of detox. When usually it seems like whenever I cook their food and it ends up getting pretty liquidy, it's almost like it has a lot more meat to it. So it's like I went with a 70-30 meat to veggies, and it'll kind of push them through a little bit of detox. Their poop will get a little slimy and stuff. So I like to put a little bit of vitamin C when that happens. You don't want to go crazy with it. They produce their own, but you don't want to push them into depending on the stuff that you're giving them. And it doesn't take much. I think a teaspoon of this stuff is a gram, so I just sprinkle a little bit on there. And then I don't use these all the time. When the dog seems to be having not sure what to say I look out for, but sometimes I'll give them the coconut oil and a little bit of apple cider vinegar, and those help with like fungal infections or anything like that. But it's probably not something to give them all the time. If he did, it'd only be a little bit of it. So now I'm going to add the rest of the veggies for this batch. And I pretty much, the way I have this with doing this batch of chicken and the amount of veggies that fit in this pot, it ends up working out pretty well to do half and half per batch here. But it depends the size of your blender and the size of the meat and veggies that you're able to get. And you don't want to like destroy this and turn it into a ton of, you don't want to mash it into super tiny pieces. I'm just doing this so the dog can chew it without choking, and it's, you know, got everything nice and mixed up so they're not picking out the stuff they like. Another thing I add, I don't go crazy with this. This is Celtic salt. It's kind of like the pink Himalayan salt. It's very, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it's very chunky. And this has about 80 different nutrients with the sodium chloride part of it. And a little bit of salt is good for them, but it's not really for the salt, it's for the other nutrients that are in there. That helps them retain a little bit more water and filter stuff out too. So now with the first batch, what I'm going to do is make a little bit of room. I use paper plates because this stuff gets pretty messy. They make a mess with it. I try to use them a couple days. So with the first batch, I break out their meal, and depending how long I've been able to let it cool down, I'll either feed it to them right now or let it cool down some more. But I'll go ahead and give this to them. You guys can eat over here tonight. Come on, Kiwi. Come on. Yeah, it's not in your usual spot. And then I start filling the rest into the container. And now I'm just going to take the rest of this, which actually it looks like I ended up with more chicken in this batch than the first one. But it doesn't have to be perfect, and I think switching up the amount that you give them, as long as it's not too rapid, is probably a good thing. And I'll let this one sit. I'll explain some more of how this is going to work. So if they've been on kibble all the time, as you can see here, these guys, it's now 8 o'clock at night, and these guys are about an hour behind when they usually eat. They've been waiting for this, and their kibble bowl is sitting over here with a pretty small dent out of it, so they definitely dig this stuff first. What happens when you switch them from the kibble to this instantly, they're gonna get a whole bunch of good nutrients out of this, especially if you supplement and if you get iodine in there. And what happens is, if you look at this, animals are little like biological chemical reactors, and when all this stuff is slowed down from eating kibble, which is 50% carbs, and dried up, it's not the right set of nutrients, it's not the right consistency, moisture level, everything. It's not good for us. So when we start getting this good nutrition, it goes in here and it starts making all these reactions, which is a good thing. That's healing happening. But when we go too quick, it's gonna literally blow the stuff out the other end. And unfortunately, because it's a messy situation, it's a good thing. When I fixed Cookie Bear, this little 3-pound dog literally made some type of explosion sound from the other room because her rear end was so violently letting this stuff out while it was purging all the funk. And for a good week, I was feeding her stuff that looks like this, and when these guys are in good shape, it comes out pretty much looking like that. Obviously not like food, but you can tell they ate carrots and stuff. And this poor little dog was letting out black stuff for a week while eating all this. And I was going pretty quickly with it, which was causing her to purge quickly and make a mess, except the reason I'm explaining this is because I think that made a huge difference in her ability to now take this food in, absorb it, and digest it, where before it was just she had the kibble locked up on her gut and it wasn't able to absorb anything. But this process of getting them on this food, you want to watch it. You want to give them as much as you can until it gets to a point where they're pooping too much and it's not looking like poop at all. And then you want to step back a little bit. They're probably not going to want to eat the kibble. You can get the kibble kind of wet on a plate or bowl, warm it up with some warm water, stick it in the microwave for a second, and the extra smell and the not being completely hard kibble, they'll eat some of that. You can mix it with the food too to kind of lower the amount of this stuff. But that's about all I can think of. Just watch them, and another thing is you're going to see them change the amount of water that they drink. This has a lot of moisture in it where the kibble was dehydrated, so every piece of kibble that they ate, they needed to drink water just to rehydrate the kibble to absorb it, and then their standard water. Where this, they're almost drinking water while they're eating this, so you'll notice a pretty big difference in the amount of water they drink. But it's really just about keeping an eye on them and changing the speed that you let them get the new food and let their body react with it and get all the old stuff out.